Hello everyone and welcome to the IXUS 2025.1 release highlights webinar. So this is our first release of 2025 and I'll be just going through some of the key features that we've implemented with this release. I'll follow that with a short demonstration and then we'll also take some questions in the form of the Q&A. Okay, so just a quick overview of what has been implemented. So it's the modeler version 4.14 as well as manager 4.14, and it was released on April Fool's Day. And these are the highlights of the things that were implemented. I'll go through them now in more detail. Okay, so the first item to discuss is the addition of the new lens antenna type. So this is a brand new antenna type that has been added to the modeler and the calculation engine as well. It does use the same calculation mechanic as our ray tracing models, like the typical panel antennas, but with a little bit of adjustment to, for example, the tilting of the specific beams. So where this one now is more like a mechanical tilting, where the other ones is more of like electrical tilting. The reason for that is that with a lens antenna, the beams that are formed that are tilted downwards is actually they behave more like a mechanical tilting. So with the electrical tilting, you would get some severe side lobes, where it's not the case with the lens antennas or Okay, so a lot of work has gone into the addition of this, and the reason why this is now nice is that so in the past we've modeled them as custom antennas, but that does come with some limitations in terms of the flexibility of how you which beams you want to show and what tilts you want. So in this case, you now have the ability to simply select the specific tilt that you're interested in, or you can perform a full tilt sweep. And you can do this per beam, depending on how the ports are set up for that specific lens antenna. Okay, so the next item I think requires a bit of background as well. So during our between the last release and this release, we spent some considerable time essentially profiling our calculation engine in terms of performance speed, let's call it that, essentially to highlight which areas are that we can make development changes to make it faster. One of the key points that was highlighted during our investigations was the lobe imprint speed, how ways that we can improve that. And it was a small enough change that we can actually implement it during the same time that we did the investigation. So there's some more items that were highlighted during our investigation, but that will only be implemented in a future release. But yeah, so some good things are coming. Let's say that. So essentially, from a user perspective, what you would find here is that obviously always depending on the specific hardware that you're using and the specific site that you're simulating. But with some tests that we have performed, especially on like my PC as well, you can get like a 30 times improvement in speed, in calculation speed. Which obviously is a drastic improvement to the calculation times. This was also one of the key areas that we had to make some changes. When you had the previously, let's call it a very large exclusion zone, for example, a 5% of public exclusion zone, because those exclusion zones were so large, the lobe imprint would also take some considerable time. So now it's as shown in this picture, it's much faster. Okay, so next item is the model license session enhancement. So essentially, there was a pop-up. I think Matt will be quite happy about this one as well, that after you've requested a license session in the modeler, you would receive a pop-up saying that the license session was requested successfully, and you had to click continue to continue. So we've removed that pop-up. It will now simply open the modeler once your session has been successfully requested. Yeah, so it's a bit quicker on startup. There's also some changes in terms of how the licensing is acquired from the IXUS manager. I won't go in too much detail here, but one of the key enhancements there is that you can now, for example, have the same user using multiple computers request a license session. Even if the license session has not been released on the one PC, it will, however, consume an additional license. So it's always advised to release your session once you're not using it anymore, but it doesn't lock out a person from using a session if there are more sessions available. Okay, so the next one is the preferences and setting enhancement. So this one is essentially in 3 sections. They sound very similar, but they're slightly different. So the first one is settings added from the IXUS ini file to the modeler preferences. So these are settings that was already available that can be changed, but in the IXUS.ini file. And these now have been moved, or not moved, also added to the modeler preferences dialog. So the user can open the modeler and change these settings in the modeler itself. It also makes it a bit more user-friendly to know what you're actually changing. One of the key things here is that these also update on the fly, let's call it that. You don't have to restart the modeler after making these changes, which is actually a significant, definitely in terms of development effort, significant improvement over having to restart the modeler. So the settings here that can be highlighted is the picture aspect ratio that can be set, 3D rendering device and driver settings. So for example, hardware rendering, stuff like that. Target FPS and undo stack depth. The next one is the modeler default preferences update. So this is essentially on a new install of the modeler on a new computer. We've changed it so that encrypted SSL connection equals true. So that's like the HTTPS connection type of things. Like I would say 90% of our client base does use it in that way. So it makes sense for us to have that as the default. We've reduced the session length from 8 hours to 3 hours. I think that also makes more sense. 3 hours is I would say, a nice amount of time for a license session. That 8 hours is a very long time for someone to essentially lock a license session, especially if they fail to release it. So that has been changed to 3 hours. Depth peeling enabled. Once again, that's a rendering issue with a lot of, let's call it, laptops that are not quite up to spec, like does not have a dedicated graphics card, for example. Those do perform better if you have depth peeling enabled, so that has been enabled by default. DirectX 11, same thing as above. And then toolbars and toolbar placement, so additional toolbars and the toolbar placement have been enabled by default, again, once with new installation of the modeler. Okay. Additional default settings also added to the IXUS.ini file. So this is new default settings that can be set in the IXUS.ini file. So this is lobe imprint height. So the current default is 2 meters. It's still the default on new installation, but a user now has the ability to edit that in the IXUS.ini file, as well as the field pointer range height. Something maybe to mention, especially in this call, is obviously these settings are stored in meters, but you can make the conversion to be able to store the correct value that is more in a metric, in imperial. Okay, so some key bug fixes. e-tilt sorting in the modeler, so that has changed now, so that it's a bit more logical, let's say. Enabled disabled features in the read-only mode. So essentially some features were not available for use in the read-only mode. Those have been made available. There wasn't really a reason for them not to be available. Export pictures should work for all rendering driver settings. So this hopefully should address a lot of issues that were experienced with picture export or saving pictures back to the manager that might have caused crashes. So that hopefully addresses that. Please provide us some feedback if you're still experiencing issues, then we'll dig further. Yeah. And then column errors with field point contribution export. So essentially, if let's say a antenna owner had a comma in their name, then the field point export would essentially, because it's comma separated, would have added a new column there, which was incorrect. Now, this was actually an issue that was brought up by one of the people in this call. Okay, some other IXUS development. So this is also development that we are doing. It's not quite directly related to the clients, like it's not won't impact your day-to-day, but it does help us support you better in our tool. So additional of more licenses categories in the portal. Fact process improvements. So once again, this is something that stemmed from the investigations that we did with our calculation engine, and the ability to delete antenna model via portal API. Okay, those are the slides, and I'll quickly do a demonstration. Okay, so to start off with, I'll just open the modeler. Okay, and this is obviously the typical. This actually shows us nicely the first thing that we can demonstrate. So it doesn't give you a pop-up, it just starts automatically once you request a session. And especially if you have a lot of new antennas added to your database, that actually would have waited until you clicked OK or continue before it would actually download the antenna database. Okay, let's actually show with this site. Okay. All right, so the first thing to show is here under preferences. So if you go edit preferences, so under general options, you'll notice that now there is some new options available, specifically rendering device, 3D rendering driver, as well as target FPS, as well as the undo stack. Essentially, how many times you'll be able to click undo once you've done something. Some of the settings have also moved to this appearance tab. For example, these box settings and the font size, as well as the picture aspect ratio is also included here now. So these can be edited here in the preferences dialog. Okay, so then I'll also maybe just show the IXUS.ini file. If I search for a lobe. Okay, there you go, default lobe imprint height. So as this is also demonstrated, I've set mine to 3 feet, which is the equivalent meter value of 0.9144. So when I run a lobe imprint now, it should default to 3 meters. So essentially it's if I'm using 6-foot spatial averaging, that is the equivalent of that. Which brings us to the next feature, which is now a lot faster, is the lobe imprint. And there we can see it's now set to 3 feet. I can obviously now change this as well. So I'll also maybe demonstrate still. If I select 6 now and I run this lobe imprint, as I mentioned, this is now also significantly faster than before. So it should not take too long, even though it's a large 5%. 5% of public exclusion zone. It should still be nice and quick. So something that you'll notice now, if I select lobe imprint again, you'll note that it's now still at 6 is because there is already an active lobe imprint performed. If there is an active lobe imprint, this will default to the what is selected at the moment, which was, I changed it to 6 just now. But if I invalidate this calculation, then it will default to the default, which is in the ini file, which is 3 feet again. Okay. Then I'll quickly delete these and just add antenna. I believe we have one that is, I think this is the one. Let's just over there, look over here. Yeah. So you'll notice here that, for example, for this frequency band, there's different ports that have different functionality. For example, this is the azimuth rotation that you can see over here. So obviously, if you excite these ports, it will simulate in that direction. The same with these ports, it will simulate in that direction. Yeah, so essentially it's what we call a unified antenna, but in terms of the tilting, the electrical tilting, that's how it now operates a bit differently. So let's just select this band, for example. We can say add, and then here we can select, for example, a tilt sweep. I can now also add LT20, let's say on these bands, on these ports, I mean, sorry. And I can select even now an individual tilt if I would like. And I can run this simulation. Okay, let's run this on point spatial. Oh, I didn't place my antenna, sorry. It's placed here at the bottom. But I think it will demonstrate the feature as well. Let me just do this. Hide all geometry. There you go. So as you can see now here that the antenna is obviously facing towards 0. You can see this one is now using a tilt sweep, where this one was just using a single tilt. And now you can set up the antenna with the correct beams as well as the correct tilts that you would like to simulate. Since a lot of these lens antennas might have a quite severe tilt range, which can be a bit over conservative if you simulate the whole sweep. Yeah, this now allows you a lot more flexibility in that regard. Okay. And that is it from the modeler. Okay, so then that essentially concludes our demonstration and our presentation. As always, I'd like to point everyone to our support channels. So everyone should know this already, but support@ixus.com, that's our support email address. This is great for just quick questions and some basic support answers, let's call it that. If it's more of a comprehensive investigation or a bit more detailed question, then I always highly recommend logging a help desk ticket. So the nice thing here is that you can upload files and it stays on the ticket, where obviously if you're doing it via email, once someone reply on that email, it's not the attachments are no longer included. So that this helps keep everything nicely in one place. And you can also schedule a support call via that link over there. The release notes is available on the help desk knowledge base, as always, including our FAQ test report. We will also upload this presentation once it's completed, so you can view this as well at a later stage. And as always, please feel free to log your feature requests or ideas via our help desk. And that is it. Thank you very much.